I guess this is a perfect way, since there was a glitch in the first overall selection. Let's bring in the man who's been a quarterback consultant of Joe Burrow's and Jordan Palmer. Jordan, it looks like Tua is going to be the number 1 overall pick. I guess that might have been the glitch. What do you think?
Is that what it is? It's funny you're telling that story, and it sounds eerily similar to my first fantasy football draft years ago. When we were, internet was kind of a new thing.
Spotty.
Drafting remotely, and players like T.J. Hushmanzada were getting drafted high, and so all these coaches never got a chance to play fantasy. Now they're seeing what the common folk deal with.
I mean, we were, in all seriousness, it does remind me of a fantasy draft, and obviously the NFL does not want it to resemble a fantasy draft, and it doesn't want it to have a moment like we're talking about in our fantasy drafts, but just like in our fantasy drafts, you can stop a clock. To fix some sort of technical glitch, should it happen, life could go on if this does happen on Thursday night, Jordan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's crazy, and you won't have like greasy fingers from wings to blame or too many IPAs. Like typical fantasy football, draft guys can blame. But I think it's going to be fascinating. For me, I'm kind of outside looking in on this. This whole how the draft's going to go down and the effects that this will have on the draft in terms of their inability to get physicals. Some guys are going to go higher than they would have.
Yes.
Because things would have got found out. Some guys are going to go lower because they didn't get a chance to win over that team in a meeting. So just to watch how it's going to go down, and then the residual effects afterwards it's going to be fascinating.
Jordan Palmer here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, so how did you get hooked up with Burrow? How does this go down? Did you know him for a long time, or did you start chatting with him during last year at LSU? What's your connection to Joe?
Well, I'd heard about him. I'm pretty connected through the Elite 11 with a lot of the high school kids coming out, and a lot of the guys who were playing on Sundays are guys that I saw when they were younger. But with that being said, I see a lot of guys. So Joe didn't necessarily stick out from that standpoint. But as he left and went to LSU, I just kind of followed that. I ran into Coach Orgeron, who was my older brother Carson's. He was the D-line coach at USC. I'm talking about way back.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I think the last time I saw Coach O, I had zits and braces, and he sounded and looked exactly the same. So I think that was the last time I saw him. But in the green room, I was there with Sam Darnold and Josh Allen, and he said, "Hey," I'd made a joke. I said, "When are you going to have a quarterback in this green room?" And he said, 2 years. And so he kind of, I think Joe was just in the transfer portal coming over, whatever it was, and so he was on my radar. I watched 2018 LSU, so not this past season, the season before. And if you really actually watch it, and I watched it in real time. People are now going back and watching tape. If you watch it in real time and you listen to the announcers and you kind of knew what was happening at LSU, Joe was putting the ball on the money. The first half of the season, his stats were bad. The second half, they were good, and so they ended up being like at the end. But they led NCAA in dropped passes in 2018. And so there was more there than met the eye. And I know LSU fans were watching the games, but Scout, I don't think a lot of other people. And so when I saw that, I go, man, I want to see this guy in person. So I invited him out to one of my QB Summit camps, which they're camps that I run, and young guys and high school guys come. And but I always have a couple of college counselors, and it was funny because I had a couple lesser-known college quarterbacks, and they no one knew who the Burrow kid was, and so that was just in July. But when I had him out there, he was throwing with Sam Darnold and Josh Allen, some of these older guys that were out there, and we all kind of said the same thing. We said, man, this guy's a little different, a little more confident than everybody else, a little more mature. And when you hear him talk about his team, man, it sounds like they got a chance to go on a run. And when I learned more about it, I actually went on a couple different media pieces in July and said, look, there's a kid no one's talking about who's got a chance to go really high in the draft, win the Heisman, win the national championship. So I at least saw the writing on the wall that was potential. I didn't know he was going to do what he did, but there was enough key ingredients there where I think you could see it.
So what does he need to work on? Seems like he makes all the throws, Jordan, but what did you see and tweak, and what do you think he brings in terms of the skill set about working on as a professional?
Well, I get a chance to spend 3 straight months with these guys, which is the biggest time period from when they start playing football to the end of a 15-year career. The draft phase actually represents the greatest opportunity, in my opinion, to take a step, because They don't have school, class, marketing things. Their friends aren't trying to get them to go out. They don't have teammates. They can just focus on themselves. So when I do at that time is I break down into two areas that we're going to focus on. One is what needs to be developed, which is a nice way of saying what needs to be fixed.
Yes.
And the second one is what just needs to be introduced. Like what have you just not done yet because they didn't ask you to do that you're going to. So part of that is coverages that they're going to see. Well, they don't run all the same coverages in the NFL they do in college. And with Joe, they were from week 4 on, they were basically in a 5-man protection every pass play, meaning they only had the 5 guys blocking. They had 5 guys out in a route, and Joe had a lot of protection responsibilities to be able to, to allocate for the rushers that were coming. And so the big part was just getting him caught up on 6-man protections and 7-man protections and play action, all the under center footwork. He was predominantly in gun. So a lot of the stuff I did with Joe was really just introducing him to what he's gonna see. We didn't really spend a lot of time getting him ready for the draft. I spent the majority of the time trying to get him ready to play his rookie year.
Okay. And then the issue of him being chosen first overall I spoke to your brother about this last week. At the Super Bowl, that was a big conversation, man, about does he really want to be picked by the Bengals? And then we started, we start tracing, your brother thinks that they didn't really want to win. TJ Hushmanzada, whose name you mentioned, I know that Joe's been throwing to him, or at least he was part of his training. How much does that play into what's going down Thursday night? Does Joe really, is he all in if he gets chosen by the Bengals, Jordan?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's a guy who, from a confidence standpoint, feels like if he's on the team that they got a chance because they have him. And that totally may sound cocky, right, to a couple of the listeners, but that is the difference here between dudes who play in the league and the ones who hold trophies, is that they genuinely believe because they have them, they're good enough to win. And so, and Joe's, I think he's looking at this and going, man, I think if I can step into a program, he took over a high school program, turned that around. He went to LSU, and they did things they'd never done before. And so I feel like he's stepping into the league and feels like he can win with anybody. And I think if you look at the Bengals, if you look at any of these teams that were rumored to try and get to one, really any of the teams in the top, there's reasons to believe that if they have Joe, they can win. And there's also things to be concerned about. And so I think that's across the board. And then connecting the dots between my brother and I, look, that was a Marvin Lewis ran team. That was different. Times have changed, some for the better, some for the worse. I don't even know. But when you change the regime, things change. And so I don't even know that my opinion even matters because it's from 9 years ago, And so I think Joe's looking at this going, all right, if he's blessed and they take him number 1, he's looking around at a roster he thinks he can win with and a division he thinks he'll be competitive in, and I think he'd look at any situation that way.
Jordan Palmer, quarterback consultant, former quarterback in the league, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. So you work with Jordan Love as well. There's been so much comparison between Love and Mahomes. Boy, that sounds unfair, but I'm wondering what you've seen from Love and his skill set that might be Mahomes-like, Jordan.
Yeah, I got a chance to spend some time with Jordan Love during this draft training as well. A lot less time than I spent with Burrow, but enough to fall in love with his traits for sure. I had spent a lot of time with Patrick during this phase too, and his last year at Texas Tech. And I think the similarities, it's certainly not fair. It's not like I've heard comparisons of Joe Burrow to like Joe Montana and these people that it's just like, how are you come up with that comparison?
Brady's the one. Brady's the one that even Kevin Falk has mentioned, and obviously he won Super Bowls with Brady. So you're hearing Brady with Burrow and Mahomes with Love. You're flat out. That's what you're hearing.
I just compare people to I'll compare Jordan Love right now to when Patrick was at this phase. But I'm not just comparing a rookie with a 21-year vet in Tom Brady, right?
Right.
So, but if I were to compare Patrick at this point and Jordan at this point, yeah, there is a lot of similarities. The similarities, the ability to throw from different arm angles, which to a casual fan probably doesn't mean a ton. But think about it like this. If you can throw from different arm angles and the result is consistent, then what that means is you're going to get more quality attempts. Like you got a better chance to complete more balls. Then if you have elite arm talent, which they both do, And then you add on there, they can both move around, and I think the future of the position is the quarterback's ability to create time and space. Sometimes that's a yard, sometimes that's getting outside the pocket. So both of those guys, Patrick and Jordan Love, have the ability to throw from different arm angles consistently with elite arm talent and move, okay? So there's the part where I would connect those two. The part that's different, and this is a giant difference, is the system that Patrick played in high school, the system that he played in at Tech, and the way I met Patrick Mahomes, Cliff Kingsbury said, hey, I got this thing. He's a sophomore. You got to get your hands on him, kind of thing. So I had never met the kid till he showed up. And so, but what they ran at Texas Tech, they didn't play a lot of defense. I mean, they had to score 40, 50, 60 points. He had to throw 4, 5, 6 touchdowns. So he just had this. Patrick had so many shootouts his whole life. He was just so much foot on the gas. And then when you don't play defense, you can't turn it over, because if you lose a possession, that's like giving them 7 points. So he also had this balance at Texas Tech where he was aggressive but made good decisions. He didn't throw a lot of picks. The difference with Jordan Love is he didn't play in that prolific offense in high school. He didn't play in that prolific offense in college. Can he do all those things? I think he can do all the same things, but one of the unique traits that Patrick has that not many fans give credit to is the fact that he has been in so many shootouts. That's why when they're down, whatever they were down, they can come back and win, because that's his mentality, and that's the difference that I see between those two.
All right, in a few minutes left to have with you, Jordan Palmer, I want to turn you, I guess, into a member of the paparazzi and an evaluator a few years in. Darnold, Mayfield, Trubisky, in terms of the consistency level or in terms of what we believe maybe is their future, which one is the closest to having already an opinion that we could form as to whether they're going to work out in this league so far? What do you got for me on that?
Yeah,
Jordan?
I think I would say on the unfortunate side of it, I would say it's Trubisky, because when you give a guy a really good opportunity, which is a good defense, some good weapons, a quality play caller and head coach, which I think is what he's been given. What you can't then say is, well, I just wasn't ready for that opportunity yet. I needed to be in year 2 or needed a little bit more experience, because this is a right place, right time league. And it's also a wrong place, wrong time league. There's been great players who just were at the wrong spot at the wrong time. And there's been pretty good, decent guys who were at the right place in the right time. And, some of them have gold jackets. And so with Mitch, I would say I'm there. I think Nick Foles is going to come in and just kind of be that little mid piece. I don't know that he's a long-term solution, but he's going to be a great missing piece for them. And then between Baker and Sam, I would say that Baker has been given more quality opportunities just with the personnel around him. I think Sam, there's a huge discrepancy between the Browns and the Jets in terms of offensive personnel. Both of them have had multiple coordinators. Both of them have had ups and downs for different reasons. Sam because he got sick, and Baker with just some off-the-field stuff and distractions. So I think, there's still we still got to see more out of those guys. Sam hasn't played a full 16 games yet. In the 2 years that he's played. And so that would be, as much as I love both those guys, that's why I'd say he's right there. But I do think that if you give Sam the weapons, I think that's going to end up, when it's all said and done, looking a lot better.
And your guy, Josh Allen, it's his division to win now, don't you think? Right?
Yeah, it's wide open. It's wide open. It's interesting because I work with Jarrett Stidham, too, who's taking over in New England. So that AFC East is filled with a bunch of guys who hang out here.
All right, so you just opened the door. I want to walk in. And how ready do you think Stidham is? Because it seems like Belichick might be ready to just hand the job to Stidham. We'll see what happens on Thursday and Friday nights. But what do you think of Stidham's readiness?
I think he's absolutely ready. He's been thrown in a lot of weird spots and handled himself well. He had a challenging childhood and had to become the man of the house at a young age. And so starting just with that right there, and then to go through Baylor with all the Art Briles, if you guys remember all that controversy and, stuff, stepping down, transferring, going to Auburn, getting thrown to a tough spot and, really, really playing well. And then last offseason, Jarrett was in as good a spot as you can be in for a young guy to learn. So last offseason, he's in the room with Tom Brady and Brian Hoyer. Between Tom Brady and Brian Hoyer, they had 31 years of NFL experience, 27 in that system. So he just got a year at MIT for football. And I know what he can do physically and from a confidence standpoint. So I think he's in a great spot. I also would say it'll be interesting to see what the Patriots do Thursday and Friday, because if they want to put competition in that room, you do it with another young guy. And so that could be interesting. But I think Jared is, if you give him the ball and put him in there, I don't know that he's going to come out.
Jordan, appreciate the time and the insight, man. You've got tons of it. We'll give you a call later in the week for next and see how it all comes out. I'd love to get your 2 cents on all of it. Always appreciate the call and the time.
You're the best. Thanks, Rich.
Right back at you. That's Jordan Palmer. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.